Recording in progress.
I have shifted to this chair for not so much for meditative reasons, but for health reasons. I've been in a lot of denial. Surprise! It's the first time in my life that I've had something, a problem that I didn't know about, but that I knew about. And
See, honey, this isn't very loud.
Not loud enough? Hang on. Let me see here. Tim, how is it for you?
It's
Fine here.
relative to the other people's voices. It's just right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you can turn up your sound, whoever that was who spoke. Turn up the volume. Let me check here and see what it looks like, but the outgoing is pretty strong. Oh, these technical things. Sheesh.
I have it 100% down below.
I couldn't understand that. So anyway, I have a dear friend. Some of you no doubt know her in Portland, Julie Goodmestad. She's kind of like the yoga teacher's yoga teacher. She's traveled all over the world to teach physical therapists yoga, and she had a byline in the Yoga Journal. We started out together. We had our offices in the same building, and be careful, Marie. You need to mute yourself. There we go. Anyway, I've had pain in my hip. I thought it was my hip for a long time, and anyway, finally, I asked her to see what was going on, and as a result of that, I read the X-ray report.
No, it was perfectly clear when.
Hang on,
tested.
Marie. I need to mute you. There. Technology. And there, right there with there's no great problems with the hip. There is moderate to severe disc degeneration in between L4 and L5. And so I have nerves that are being crushed in my back. And Julie told me it really isn't wise for me to carry 75 pounds of gravel and things like that anymore. And also that when I sit up straight, it's about the worst thing I can do for it. So I've taken to sitting in this chair, which I've had over on the other side of my room. It's not the best thing for meditation. I mean, sitting comfort, I can get it pretty. That's not bad actually, but that's really crappy for my back. So I'm experimenting with being a little bit more reclined, and of course, the proper position for meditation is every position. Right? Sitting, standing, walking, lying down, bicycling, driving, skydiving, you name it. It's always the right position. So that's that. And she showed me a couple of things to do that I could actually put some traction on it, and lo and behold, the pain gets less. How do you like that? I guess it means the diagnosis is kind of accurate. Okay. Participants. Karen and Steffi, I'm muting you. Please be sure to try that, to keep your mutedness on. Thanks for being here this morning. There came a time in the life of Siddhartha when his everyday life became transparent somehow. And he saw that that was not going to provide him with the answers he was seeking, which were freedom and deep compassion and love. And so something happened that in the Buddhist world is called, in the Buddhist mythology, is called the Great Going Forth. And we all come to that place. Or if we're really lucky, we come to that place. And there's a poem about it that I like to read in that context. And many of you will know it. Any of you that have done counseling with me over the decades know that I always recommend this. This is on a lot of refrigerators. And it's by Mary Oliver. It's called The Journey. One day you finally knew what you had to do. And you began. Though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice. Though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do. Though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible, it was already late enough, and a wild night, and the road was full of branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company. As you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. That's quite something, isn't it? One day you finally knew what you had to do and began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice. Though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do, though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations. Though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough in a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voices behind, the stars began to burn through the sheets of clouds. And there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company. As you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life you could save. And if you would like to have this, I suggest you just Google Mary Oliver, The Journey, and there it will be. So this next bit is a little bit tricky, with the space being what it is, but I can do it. I'm going to back up a bit. I've shown this to you once or twice before, I think, but this, I forget his first name. Tom, I think. Tom Schulte. Do you know him, Tim?
I do not.
He's a luthier in Vancouver, Washington. Check this out. I mean, these are the scraps that were left from other guitars. And he made this guitar out of it, and then he put it up for auction at a, what's it called, Winterfest or Winterfest. Winterfest. They've been doing a concert for many years, and it raises money to get people off the streets, out of homelessness. And I bought 5 tickets, and I said to Jen, I'm going to go home with that guitar. And I did. So I never buy any tickets again, just to make it be as though it was something I could predict. Anyway, this lovely guitar will accompany me and us if you want to sing along. I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. I take refuge in the Buddha, the way of understanding and love. That's not right. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya. There. There comes a time, if we're lucky, when we decide to go beyond stress management, better psychological and emotional health. And when we really face the question, who am I and what's going on here? When we start really noticing that pleasures come and go, pains come and go, people come and go, Years come and go. Weeks come and go. Even hopefully before too long, COVID will come and go. And so we start paying attention. We start noticing that breathing in and breathing out happen. And not just superficially, but we actually notice that's what's happening. And we notice that thoughts happen. And it becomes clear that they happen rather than that we think them. And it becomes clear that every thought has a beginning and an ending. And every breath has a beginning and an ending. And we embrace this reality. the breath has been with us since the moment our mother could no longer provide oxygen. We took that first gasping breath, and unless we've been on a heart-lung machine for major heart surgery and been breathed, I guess anyone who's been in general anesthetic has been breathed for us. But all this time, the breathing's been coming and going all by itself. And so we bring this mystery of awareness to it, but not in some rote way. What if you'd never taken a breath before? This breath would be really interesting. Or what if you knew it was one of your last few? What if there were 5 more breaths in this lifetime? And there's a common battle that meditators get involved in that keeps us stuck for decades even. And it's the battle to stop the mind. It's like trying to stop the weather. So instead of trying to stop it, why not embrace it with great love and compassion? Recognize how quite insane it is. How out of control, how strange. It comes up with the oddest thoughts. And notice simply how they come into being and then they disappear. Meditation both develops and manifests loving friendliness or loving kindness. It develops and reveals compassion. If we dare to take the lid off and really look at our lives. If the denial melts away a little bit, there's no option but love and compassion. And we can notice some of the ways that the suffering arises in our lives come from the mind, from the endless stream of desires. I want this, I want that. It can be very subtle. I want more concentration, or it can be kind of coarse. Or it's sort of opposite. I don't want this. Disliking, aversion. Two of the three roots of suffering right there, greed and hatred. And then we notice unsettledness in the form of restlessness, agitation, worry, planning, remembering, figuring out, making lists. Or just falling into sloth and torpor. Sleepy dullness, quite attractive in a way sometimes. Or there can be doubt. Doubt is very unsettling because it kind of pushes us away from practice. Mindfulness is infinitely vast by contrast with these hindrances. They exist within awareness. And so with our refuge in the Buddha, in being aware, we finally come to grips with the hindrances, with the emotions, with the various tendencies to addiction and compulsion. And we ground them in the coming and going of the breath. This breath right now. From time to time, it serves us well to notice what is the state of the mind at this point. Is there a lot of wandering, or very little, or none, perhaps? What mood is coloring the mind? Is there contentment or some sense of ill-at-easeness? No need to change it. On the journey, we discovered that there's another voice. It's different from the voice of the world and the voice of our teachers and the voice of the superego telling us how we should be. It's the voice of the Buddha saying, you're all right just as you are. How could you be any way other than the way you are right now? And we might engage that primary mantra. It needs no translation. It comes in our own language. The words are, I love you, with your own name at the end. Maybe your own name when you were little, if you have a diminutive name that you like. I love you. And then maybe a question. How can I be more loving of you, to yourself? How can I take better care of you? And both as a motive for our going forth and as something we discover along the way. Something like, I'm willing to be open to the pain in my life, to the suffering in my life. I'm willing to pause in my various activities and intoxications, obsessions, to actually feel how it is to be me. And my intention is to hold myself in sweet, gentle, loving compassion. In a way, compassion takes no effort because it's our natural state. Right now, holding yourself in compassion. There's really a big difference between being lost in the hindrances and noticing them. It's really like night and day. So we are scientists, carrying out the experiment with an N of 1. Is it possible to wake up from the dream, from the trances? To notice how you'll be lost for some time, minutes, a tenth of a second, lost in some thought stream, lost in some emotional turmoil, and then present. And the trance becomes an object to observe rather than being who we are. And so we sit here and breathe. From the outside, it could look as though nothing was happening. On the inside, however, we are doing what I believe to be the most important work in the world. It's the work of taking responsibility for our own life. Taking responsibility for our emotions and for our conditioning, all the various layers of conditioning we've had our whole lives, starting with our parents. Various levels of cultural propaganda and beliefs. And we're setting ourselves free. Free to become more loving and kind. Free to be more effective. Free to hurt others less and less. And we could, if we wanted to, add a few phrases. So we move from simple observation into the cultivation of love and compassion. Some phrases that I've had with me for decades go like this. I long to be happy. May I be really happy. May I be free from fear and danger. May I live with ease and grace. May I be liberated. And about 15 years ago, I added a fifth phrase. It's a quite personal one. Bobby, I'll never abandon you again. I invite you to cultivate a few phrases that become very nourishing to you. And you can repeat them and reflect on them without really thinking about it. They become a mantra of sorts. And now, please allow awareness to come into your feet and legs and your buttocks. Feel the pressure of your body into the chair, the cushion. Allow the life of the moment in the hands to be known. And then notice how you do it. It's the strangest thing. Allow awareness to be present in the face. How did you do that? In the cheeks and the lips and the eyes. And then making the intention. How do we do that? To let the eyes open and then let that somehow operationalize itself. And you may notice a big change. Seeing. We take it for granted. And then we can see with what I like to call the eyes of blessing. To let your eyes, if your vision will allow this, it could be that your vision isn't clear. In which case, You notice that. But if it's clear, and mine is only clear when I have these pretty powerful corrective lenses on, you very quickly become blurred. It's more satisfying to be able to see you. And then let your gaze fall on a person. I had a teacher in San Francisco, Rena Sirkar, who would have us in a smallish circle, maybe 10 people, 15. We'd look around the circle and see one another, and she would remind us of how difficult it is to be a human being. She'd give examples. And so we'd see one another and go beyond our usual inner strategies and instead see someone who's probably lost a loved one in their life, or who's been betrayed, or who's betrayed someone or someone's. Someone who's worried about finances or health or has a major health issue. Someone who's in the middle of a breakup. Someone who struggles with a really bad anxiety disorder or depression. Or whose blood pressure is out of control. Or whose child is descending into addiction. Or is in jail. And then Rena would say, remembering this, how can we be anything but loving of each other? It's fun, actually. I love it. And we can do this with strangers and people we imagine. It's so much better than worrying. Well, I have a couple of announcements, and then Jim will lead in some movement, mindful movement. There was a very successful meeting with the city last week, and they are now convinced that we will never have more than 30 people in the basement. So it means that we do not need to spend $70,000 to create a sprinkler system and an alarm system, and probably we don't need to make a 2-hour fire barrier between the downstairs and the upstairs. And so that's the good news. The bad news is somehow or another, they discovered that the doors on all the offices downstairs are 2 feet 6 inches, and they must be 3 feet, which the builder says will cost a mere $30,000. So we saved 70, and then so we're figuring out the finances right now, and as soon as they give us a go, we're going to build. But it's so strange. Another announcement is this. Most of you probably know this, but as of this afternoon around 4 o'clock, I'm going to get in my car and drive an hour and a half or so to the beach. And then I'm going to turn off until Monday, a week from tomorrow. And I'm really looking forward to that time. quiet. Jim and the other teachers will be taking over the morning shift, and then next Sunday, I think Candle is teaching. And I hope you will all be here and support one another and them. And the latest news from the Canada-US border is that they're thinking to open it, at least partially, in late June this month. And so my retreat at Hollyhock looks like it will probably go. So if you're hungry for 5 days of practice, and if that's a possibility in your life, I would suggest signing up soon. Anything that I'm missing, Jim?
No, not that I can think of. We'll
Great.
be here tomorrow morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, some of us.
So I will now pass the baton to you. I think I did what's necessary for that, yes? I
Yes,
think I made you co-host.
I can spotlight my camera here, and if you would like to join me with some mindful movement, move to a spot in your space there that you can stretch out a little bit, and we'll do some Qigong. So we always begin from the bottom, go down deep to the sensations in the bottoms of the feet, and just feel the ability to stretch overhead, stretch out to the side. We've been sitting, restraining all movement or most movement, I guess, for the last 45 minutes. We can stretch out. But now let's come to a gesture where we lift our hands and face the palms out. And then just take a half step and push gently, turn your wrists and bring the palms towards you. So we're just doing a simple push and pull, shifting the weight so that the sensations in the feet tell you where your center of gravity is. You have lots of weight in front when you push. You have lots of weight right over your back leg when you come back. And this is always an interesting gesture for me because I reach out with these hands and I see my mother's hands. Thich Nhat Hanh said, don't put so much emphasis on your birthday. It's just a continuation day. Life has built these hands out of the substance of our parents. And every once in a while I don't see my dad's hands because he died when I was 10, but I do see my mother's brother's hands. He had liver spots just like this. Let's switch. We'll step back and then move to the other corner, pressing, feeling the stretch in your shoulders, the shifting of weight back to the back leg, engaging with that front foot releasing that, transferring to the back foot. Just like me, my Uncle Joe played baseball and jammed a knuckle here and a knuckle there until they're swollen, and as he aged, they gave him a lot of, brought his attention to pain in the knuckles when it rained. And here I am, decades later, seeing his hands, seeing the swollen knuckles. Life unfolding. Whose hands are these?
Too much talk. Oh, no.
Coming back to the center, relaxing the arms, feeling the sensations when the arms are just relaxed and gravity is just gently pulling them out of the shoulder sockets. You can feel the softness in your shoulders, softness in your elbows, in your wrists, just resting the arm down. Feeling the breath. Life is unfolding in a rhythm, and the breath moves in a rhythm of inhaling and exhaling. I don't own this breath. There's no me to own it. The breath is part of life unfolding, filling the lungs, releasing. I can reach over with one hand, and as I do that, I can feel the sensations in the bottoms of my feet. There's more engagement on one side. Lift that hand up, bring it across, and let it sink. Now, the sensations on my feet, bringing the attention to the differential between one leg and the other. Bring the other hand over to the side, across, and then up and over and down. So we start this gesture with a particular rhythm. Lifting, carrying across, releasing, reaching, lifting, carrying across, setting down. So it's not my hand that's moving, it's a continuation of the hand of life, life manifesting as this hand, lifting, carrying, releasing, reaching, lifting, carrying across, releasing, so not only do I make associations with my mother and her brother, but I make associations with the teachers that I've had that taught me to pay attention how you lift, how you carry, with what power are you setting down, reaching, lifting, with what power? Is it your power, or is it the power of life, life itself, aware of lifting, carrying, setting down, pausing, remembering again how we can soften the shoulders, soften the elbows, soften the wrists, and let the hands just release. Rest, feeling the pulse in the hands perhaps, or the temperature, or air moving through the fingers, lots of different possibilities, but life unfolding as sensation in these hands. Sinking down, opening the arms again, feeling that stretch out to the side, up into the space above, drifting down little by little, noticing every little change. Opening to the side, slowly, sensations in the shoulders, the arms, and the hands, old injuries, new sensations of release and relaxation. Slowly incorporating all the movements of life, setting down. Life aware of itself, releasing down, opening, turning the wrists, palms up. Feel the stretch when your palms are up. Feel the release when your palms are down. And then come back to center. Quieting everything, but the breath continues. Movement in the rib cage, in the diaphragm, maybe the whole body. Opening to new energy with each in-breath. Of the whole body, releasing from every cell. Again, maybe a sigh. And once more. Bringing our hands together in gratitude for another opportunity to practice together, to build a feeling of solidarity with people all across the world that are developing deeper mindfulness and deeper compassion and deeper wisdom. We all get together on this very strange electronic device. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you tomorrow morning if you want to begin your day with a meditation at 7 o'clock. And otherwise, I'll see you next time, whenever that is. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Jim.
You are welcome. There's a question on the chat box about
Yeah.
next Saturday's Qigong class. I thought about doing it outside, but I'm not sure how to manage restroom facilities. But I thought of going out to the side, yard at the center on Duke Street, but I think it's a little too complicated to handle all that stuff. So
Let's talk about it and see if we can figure a way to make it work.
okie doke. It's an open question then.
Like so many. So let's take a few moments to land here. Something we can do dozens and dozens of times a day, at least twice. To stop and what I think of as plop into the body. I thought I was going to continue on that theme of the journey. And maybe it fits in here, but something else is preempting, oddly, interestingly, which is the essential practice of generosity. The attitude of generosity, the embodying of generosity. And as is so often stated in the Buddhist teachings, there are three primary roots of suffering. And it isn't just words. It's funny, all the teachings are making more and more sense to me. Things that I've taught for years, as though I knew something about them, keep getting more meaningful. It's like, wow. Even at the level of let's observe this next breath. Notice that it has a beginning, and then that disappears. And then there's a rising to fullness, and then it gets full, and then it declines. And by the time the decline begins, the beginning is gone, Gone, away, non-existent. Over, finished, anicca. Perhaps I should edit, but holy shit. How can that be? It's really over. Makes me teary. How can that be? Things exist only for not even a nanosecond. As they begin, they're ending. So that's a pretty fundamental teaching. And it gets more and more real. And the practice of generosity, seen as foundational, there's this lovely, I've done it 1,000 times teaching, if we have a little platform and we have a chair, a three-legged chair, there are three legs to the, it can be like one of those ads on Amazon where you can turn it three-dimensionally to see all of its different features. That one of the legs is training the heart-mind, doing the meditation, cultivating bhavana. Another is moral and ethical behavior. And the third, essential, is generosity. Now that's pretty interesting, I think. And it's becoming more and more interesting to me. I have a major act of generosity that's manifesting starting today. I watched a video of an interview with Joseph Goldstein last November, I think. And in it, incidentally, it came out from the interviewer that he has spent about 3 months of every year in retreat in his adult life. Now there's privilege. And look who he's become. And the monks have taken the Rains retreat, the 3-month retreat every year, standard. So I decided that I would this year take 4 one-week periods when I would go and actually retreat and be responsible. It's a hugely generous act to myself primarily, but then also to my work. And it's taken some effort. So if we were to start reflecting on generosity, where does it begin? It has to begin with ourselves. And one of the most generous acts that we can offer the world is to stop every day, like we do in the mornings, but to really make taking some inward time as a very high priority. It's a gift to all beings. I don't know of anything more important. If we happen to also be activists in the world, let's root our activism in depth and silence. I could read this quote. Some more than 20 years ago. Go back. Why is it not working? Here we go. Maybe 30 years. I don't know. A long time ago. I was at Cloud Mountain Retreat Center. And I saw this little piece of paper on the bulletin board. And I read it. And I willfully looked away. Because I knew that if I really read it, I would have to change my life. And then some years ago, not long ago, 3 or 4 or 5 years ago maybe, I remembered it and I found it in seconds on the internet. And it's continuing to change my life. It's by Thomas Merton. There is a pervasive form of contemporary violence to which the idealist most easily succumbs: activism and overwork. The rush and pressure of modern life are a form, perhaps the most common form of its innate violence. To allow oneself to be carried away by a multitude of conflicting concerns, to surrender to too many demands, to commit oneself to too many projects, to want to help everyone in everything, is to succumb to violence. The frenzy of our activism neutralizes our work for peace. It destroys our own inner capacity for peace. It destroys the fruitfulness of our own work because it kills the root of inner wisdom which makes work fruitful. Hey, Jim, I'm going to send that to you right now. Can you put it in the chat?
Yes, sir.
That's an easy way to do it. It'll be in your inbox in a second. So generosity, it's not selfish to stop and spend an hour a day in self-practice. in meditation practice, or maybe 2. Now that's really hard. I get to have a little conversation every now and then with our Dharma sister Kyra. We don't see her much on here because she's the mother of twins. And it's a full-time job, to say the least. Oh, plus she's a realtor, and so she's also trying to make a living and succeeding. Good market for that right now. But I invite you to ask yourself, how generous are you with yourself? Do you take time to exercise? Do you get enough sleep? Do you turn off your phone often enough? Is there something else that you really need to be doing for yourself? Some of us, maybe many of us, learned in our family of origin that our needs really aren't that important, because we needed to be taking care of the parents. The whole thing of being a parentified child. And that if we don't dance and smile and be really attentive to the parents, nothing will come our way, and so we'll be desperate. So there then gets to be an equation between I have to be acting in order to be lovable. I have to be filling the cistern so some will come back to me. And now the other polarity of generosity, the one in which we do this. A little spray medication, good for the eyelids when you have blepharitis. Notice what happens interiorly when I say and do this. This is mine. Doesn't feel good. Even in play like this, it doesn't feel very good, does it? As opposed to, well, this is really helpful to me. If you need some, please ask me and we can share. It could be hours. And everything changes. Everything changes. And so there's a tightness, a fearfulness. I don't have enough. I've been teaching this generosity stuff now for decades, and I've had many people. It's really gratifying when someone comes and says, you talk. I learned about practicing generosity from you a year or 2 or 5 ago, and it's really changed my life because now I feel like I have enough. It's an interesting thing, isn't it? If we have greed and we start giving, we start having the sense of having enough. Now, this doesn't mean, of course, I'm remembering someone that it was a student a long time ago who came from a religious background where tithing was required. And tithing means 10% of your gross, as I recall. And she was a single mother with 2 children, and she was attempting to tithe to PIMC. And we had a really useful conversation in which I said, look, the practice of dana isn't tithing. The practice of dana is something that we do in order to feel good. And so maybe it's inappropriate to be giving anything to PIMC, and maybe you should be giving yourself a day off every now and then, or that the practice of dana is about consciousness and about knowing when it's appropriate to be giving, and weighting the scale, putting our finger on the scale a little bit to learn that we can do a little more. It can be in very small ways. It can be one of the practices that I like to do is to find some way every day that you can be generous. And these days, of course, it's so easy to find someone in the world who needs something. I mentioned this just the other day when it happened. I went to the food court over in Beaverton, and there was a fellow there. It was evening. It was warm, but not super warm. He had too much skin showing, and he was bruised in places that seemed very odd, and he was in a wheelchair. And it was a perfect opportunity. I got to walk up to him and say, "Hi, what do you need?" And he said, "Well, I'm really hungry." And I asked him what he'd like. There's about 25 food carts. And I went and got him a burger and fries and a drink. And it was no effort on my part. But the payback, to hand him that bag of food, and then he said, "Well, I guess that takes care of me for today. I'm going to go home now." And I don't know his story, but it's not a good story. Those bruises look bad to me. And so here it is. I get to feel good about it and share it with you these days later. And there's a saying, we put it on our tax gratitude letters from PIMC always. We sign it with Anumodana. And loosely translated, Anumodana means, may you take delight in this act of generosity now, when you're doing it, and also when you frequently reflect upon it later. So there's an encouragement. Practice being generous. It always comes up to me to speak about how our children, it's kind of scary actually. They model our tone of voice. They model our emotional tone. They model how we behave in the world. And if we're generous, our children become generous. Generous and gratitude. I just remembered, I've had the incredible privilege of having a hot tub since my son Luke was 4. And I managed to get the insurance company to pay for almost all of it because of high blood pressure. It was great. But anyway, when I get in that, it's empty right now, but when I get in that, I always feel so wealthy. So imagine I have hot water that I can get into, and it's clean, sort of. And Jennifer disapproves of my taking care of it the way I do, but it's as good as I can get it. But with each, I'd get in and I'd say to the kids, "Oh, we're so rich. Look at this. We have hot water." And because I've been places in the world where they're, like in Tibet, I met people who've never had a hot bath. Never, ever. Anyway, so my kids grew up thinking, wow, we're so rich. We have this and we have all this stuff. And then each of them came home at a certain point when they started traveling out with friends. And they came home and said, "Dad, I was over at Johnny's house and we're not rich." In which case we then had a very useful conversation. Well, aren't we? Let's consider, let's think about it. So generosity. And now the other thread is coming up, which is sometimes the ways in which we think we're being generous with ourselves are actually distractions. Eating, substances, altering consciousness. What's the real, where is the real generosity? It's in love and compassion, isn't it? So when we sit in meditation, can we dare to be generous and love ourselves? It's a stretch. Can we dare to open up to what's hurting and be compassionate? That too is a stretch. And then when there's someone that we turn to who could use that love and compassion too, we can be generous there. From a full tank, a full heart. So I think that's what I want to say. And I invite you to add anything you'd like to about your discoveries of generosity and also of setting off on the journey, really taking the journey of your life seriously. Not somberly, but seriously. So if you wish, please unmute yourself and we will all hear you. Thanks, Jim. I see that's in the chat.
Robert, it's Joshua.
Joshua.
How
And
are
you're
you?
together. I love it.
I love it too. Thank you so much for the meditation and talk today. Something you just said at the very end really struck me, just about real love and compassion and generosity. And I was thinking to myself, well, if your 10 or 6 or 12-year-old came to you and said, and they were filled with pain or anguish about something they were going through, would we then hand them a drink or some mind-altering substance and say, here, this is the most compassionate thing I can do for you? Well, no. I mean, how does it get to be, right? I mean, it seems so absurd to think about it in those terms, but as adults, that's where we turn to deal with our own pain, suffering, and anguish, and how unloving that is to ourselves, how ungenerous that is to ourselves, to think that that's the solution to the pain that we're confronted with. So that was, I don't know, more of a thought than a question, but something that's rattling around my brain too. And it's a semantic thing, and it may seem just like splitting hairs, but it's terminology around the 3 poisons. I hear greed, hatred, and ignorance in one area, and then desire, aversion, and delusion in another. And there's a subtlety there that I want to make sure I'm understanding and getting right in the use of those terms. Maybe you could help me clarify or be straight with on that. Or maybe it doesn't make a difference.
Never heard of them. Well, of course we are creatures of desire. We wouldn't be here if we weren't, right? Something got our parents together to make a baby, and something gets us to go to the kitchen to make dinner. And so desire it's not a bad thing, it just is. And aversion, it's really good that we have aversion to, if we put our hand in a fire, it's very good that we have that aversive response to get out of it. And so all those forces that can that guide us. That guide us to surviving. The issue is, I think, when we are driven, when we have no choice about, if I have a desire, I act on it. If I have an aversion, I act on it. I was actually just reflecting this morning about my retreat that's coming, and I really intend to simplify. I'm going to really simplify my diet for the next week and a half, and stay off electronics really completely. And what inevitably happens when I do that is there are desires that I have that come up, and they can be a little problematic. I want this, I want this, I want that. But the purpose of the retreat is to simplify and also set up some artificial boundaries. They're not that, well, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not going to push the button and turn on CNN. And that's a habit. I kick it every time I go on retreat, but it's being engaged in the soap opera of the news seems so real and so important until for a few days in a row, don't indulge it. And then I realize, I don't need that. So that's the way I think one makes sense of it, that we can set ourselves free from being driven by desires. I don't know. I remember at the very beginning of the book Siddhartha, when he went to his father and said, will you give me permission to go and go explore? And he said, I can think, I can wait, and I can fast. Those are real skills. And then delusion and ignorance, which I think is a verb, I think that's just the human condition. It's where if you believe in evolution, and I do, where we're coming from is totally unconscious. If there's a greed, you fill it. You fulfill it if you can. And you've probably heard me tell the story of my little dog Budo, that Budo loves to chase squirrels, and I've never seen him catch one. But when there's two dogs like Budo, that kind, they catch squirrels relatively well. They're hunters, and when I have him at the center and I take him out to the backyard, and I have actually done this several times. I've sat down, not knowing that it wouldn't work, but I thought I should try. And I've sat with him and patted him a little bit, and I've said, okay, now, Budo, you always run out the door hoping there's a squirrel. And if there's a squirrel, you run after it and try to kill it. This is bad karma. Don't do it. When you go out there, notice the squirrel and the impulse to chase it, and don't. He never gets it. We can rein in the greed, hatred, and we do it through a lifting of the cloud base of ignorance. And so then we can know it. And sometimes the impulses to act, as you've found, if you've been practicing for a while, there's sometimes impulses to go and do one's old pleasures. So it's hard. Sometimes we fail for a long time. We succeed, and then we fail, and we succeed and fail. And so is that speaking to the issue that you were asking?
Yes, Robert, thanks. I was wanting to be just clear on the use of the terminology, and does it matter whether I use greed or hate?
Oh, absolutely not. It's the feeling. It's the experience internally.
Yeah.
And some desires, of course, it really makes sense to fulfill. Karmically very wholesome, very...
Thank you very much.
Robert?
I hear a voice.
Yes, it's Eileen.
Hello, Eileen.
I want to follow up on what Joshua asked, which I was thinking about beforehand. And I don't know if this kind of fits more into psychological dynamics, or it's probably combined. If you, following up on your story about Buddha, right? Which of course is charming. Well, I actually can't follow up that way. Sometimes what we call resistance, like when there's something that's good, if you're feeling depressed or anxious, or something skillful, right? Helpful. It feels to me like it's more than resistance. It feels like resistance is when I'm in delusion and don't even realize that. But it feels like it's aversion. I mean, it literally does. It kind of feels like, no, I can't do that. I can't pick up that book. And I'm just wondering if that's, I'm just wondering if you have anything.
I'm not sure what you're asking, Eileen.
Well, what I would call resistance, it feels like no matter how much I want to do it, there's this part of me. I mean, like drawing. I can do it. And sometimes I know this is exactly what I need to do to get expressive. And that's why I don't know if this is just, psychological problems fits in that category. But it is literally like I can't do it, and I'm so desiring to do it. So does that connect in any way to, all these teachings? It feels like it's aversion at that point.
I think so. I can tell you what comes to mind as you're speaking, which is, actually, let me change something here. I've got one setting that's not good, that's making a lot of feedback at my end. Let me see, where is it? It's here. Close this off and off. I think that did it. All right. In the very first psychotherapy class I ever took, long time ago, I remember the teacher talking about psychological ego defenses. And the attitude that he was teaching, and that it certainly has lived with me ever since, is honor the defenses. Respect the defenses. Any defense that we have, we learned early on, and it was life-saving. And like becoming a parentified child and trying to be helpful all the time, or any defense that we have that then we have, when we want to do something different, there's resistance to the doing something different, and it comes up in the form of aversion. Okay. So then the I think psychotherapeutically and also the meditatively, that then becomes the object of our meditation. What's the resistance? And how do I love that resistance? How do I attend to the resistance? How do I attend to that aversion? Where do I find it in my body? Not trying to get rid of it, but seeing it as it is. And then inevitably, it becomes impersonal. Then inevitably, it becomes another field of energy, and then we can move on.
Okay, I've never done it that way, and I often know the resistance, and the resistance, these are recent in the last 10 years. Mm-hmm. And every once in a while, I just spontaneously don't have the resistance.
And aren't those amazing moments? And then you have to go, oh, damn, I forgot my resistance.
Right. But the thing is that I kind of think about the reasoning, and it's, again, I believe in that parts. There's a part of me that just says, what's the use? You let it go before it's too late, all that kind of stuff. But there's another part of me that doesn't believe it at all, that just wants to do it for the pleasure of it. But what I'm trying to do is do it all through the thinking and the talking. And I never, see, this is the element I never used, was really the body stuff. Or I don't want to go into too many details, but now that I've been doing the meditation and I'll really get to something and I'll feel the feelings and feel it in my body. And I think it's going to carry over. But a couple of hours later, I have the desire to do the old behavior even more.
Mm-hmm.
So it's again, so it goes back to that old, that's how they used to do therapy, as you well know, back in the 70s and 80s. Why are you doing that? And change it. So I think you've been really helpful with that, because it's self-condemnation then. It's just another reason to feel really bad about yourself.
The place that I really land, and this is kind of like, remember before I was saying how remarkable it is, how stunning it is to realize that the breath has a beginning and then it's over by the middle. It's over immediately. The difference between being caught in the trance and thinking and being awareness is utter. It's complete. And so mindfulness is the most powerful thing in the universe, I think I could say. Being awake, like the Buddha's discovery that it's possible to be awake and realize all this personality, this body, it's all objects of awareness. And that what I am is not any of this, it's that which knows. I mean, that is mind-boggling. And
so the watcher, what we call the watcher, is not this, because that's the other thing. I was thinking about this yesterday. I'm completely aware. I'm aware when I'm gonna subtly start the behavior, the routine. I'm aware of when I'm not talking about the aversion. I'm now talking about acting out on something. I'm watching it, but I do it anyway. It's not like I'm doing it blindly. So awareness is not the same thing as just that part. Is that I was assuming that was being aware, that because I'm watching it and I'm seeing what I'm doing and there's no denial, and I'm doing it, and it just becomes I want to do it, I'm doing it or not doing it. But that's not awareness, is it? That's watching.
Whenever I would propose a correction to your thinking, if I could.
Please.
This is really direct from Ruth Dennison. 30 or 40 years ago, I sent her a tape, a little cassette tape of one of my talks that I was very proud of. And at that point, she rarely called me. I mean, in 2 decades, she called me 5 times maybe. And she called me and said, "Darling, I want to speak about this talk. You're using the term the witness. Stop. There's no such thing as the witness. That's not Buddhism. That's Gurdjieff. They talk about the witness or the watcher." And she said, instead, and it's awkward, awareness is aware. Because there's not someone who's aware, in fact. We'll never find that someone. And when that's where the locus of identity is, in awareness, then the self may go ahead and do its obsessive behavior or its acting out or whatever, but it's all lit up. And then the identification is not there. And then those habitual patterns fade away in time because they're not who we are.
This is the teaching that when you look at even cutting edge therapy stuff you read online, even Buddhist therapists, some that who profess to be everybody. I have they're saying the DBT, all of that is talking about the watcher, watch, witness yourself. So that was something that had been alien to me before that. And I have wondered why, in the cases I won't reiterate because I'm taking all this time, that it doesn't seem to work. So, wow, so I don't think I know really what it is to be aware. I've mistaken it.
You want to try an experiment?
Sure. I just feel, am I taking too much time from everybody else? Does anybody else?
Absolutely not. So
All
let's,
right.
and we can all try this. Please become aware of your right hand. And now create the intention and let your right hand rise up until it's before your face. And now see it. And let the fingers move and see them and know that you're seeing. And now move it to the right and to the left. And now maybe let's let each of the fingers in turn touch the thumb, closing in, touch, 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 touch. That's awareness.
Because
We don't have to think about it. It's just not fancy. Or how about this? Create an image of your kitchen sink.
Okay, got it.
And be aware of it. And notice that's what's happening. That's all. It's just not fancy. It's so ordinary. And we all want to make it into something complicated. That's all the practice is. Be here now. Try to live in the present moment. This moment is like this.
When we do the body work, I mean, just feeling our bodies, feeling the pulsation, I do that so easily. Sometimes I'm even a step ahead. That's what's just so ironic about this, because I don't have any problem.
So your mind follows. You can do a body sweep quite effectively and stay in the body, not thinking about it.
Right.
How wonderful.
Well, I don't know if I think about it, but I feel it. I'd have to.
And then you'll notice, maybe the mind will go wandering off, but then you can come back to those sensations. That's wonderful.
All I'm saying is I feel sensations so easily, but I didn't know it was, okay, well, God, thanks a million. And I ought to get back a lot of money from therapists.
Well, I have a secret about therapists, I think. Not a secret, but I have an opinion about therapists.
Yes.
There's all kinds of strategies. The question is really, do they love you? Because to be in the presence of another person who Carl Rogers called it, because he couldn't possibly say it the other way, to be in the field of unconditional positive regard, he called it. And if one has unconditional positive regard for the person with whom you're sitting, they heal. You both heal. And so there's all kinds of strategies, and people make a lot of money out of a brand new therapy that we're doing this. And it's always the same thing. I mean, that's oversimplifying, because I know about 20 years ago or so, I needed some continuing ed credit as a social worker, and I'd heard about this EMDR business, and I thought it was really bogus. and then I went and it was a 3-day weekend, and there was a certain point early in the weekend where they suggested, think about a traumatic circumstance, and this fellow that I was sitting beside, who I really came to dislike strongly and thought he shouldn't be a therapist, he started moving his hand back and forth, and I started moving my eyes, and all of a sudden there were thoughts and emotions, and they were coming through, and I was like, oh my God, this is different. And so then I learned how to do that, and it was very helpful, and I was a patient in that modality for years. So I can also be ridiculously arrogant and not learn something new, but love and compassion are what heals us.
But don't you think so? Because I don't have any doubt about that. I've been really fortunate, but I think sometimes it's just really the person's inability to totally accept it, or to accept it, take it in for more than a little bit.
That's true for all of us.
Okay, so
That's true for all of us, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Some people met the Buddha,
Yeah.
and within a few seconds they woke up. They say they were really ripe. Others met the Buddha, and he gave them lots of practices, and they hung around for weeks, months, years, decades, and then they woke up. But I really do think it's all about love. And loving ours. To love oneself means to allow oneself to be what one is and to stop fighting oneself and to quit thinking about it, and then there you are. Thank you, Eileen.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
It's raining. It's nice to be in a little house where I can hear the rain. I got our water catchment system working really well. As of this morning, we have 300 gallons of rainwater that Jennifer will use to water her indoor plants. Before COVID, this is really an amazing story. Before COVID, she had 3 plants. We now have 85 plants. And she keeps propagating more. It's quite wild. But there's so many different kinds, and all winter we had humidifiers going, and it's amazing. There's so much life. But apparently, there's certain kinds of plants, if you water them with tap water, the tips get brown. So I created this rainwater catchment system, and it's full. Makes me want to go out and buy another tank. So it's noon. Anybody else sitting with something that that you'd like to say before we close up shop for the day, for the week?
Hey, Robert.
Michael.
Yes, it is I. I just want to say quickly, thank you so much, and especially for that last concept that you came upon about unconditional positive regard. And I mean, I have the good fortune of like knowing how true that is. That one is in the presence of unconditional positive regard, they heal. And I just had one additional thought about that, which is that like, I think a crucial part of that in a therapeutic relationship or a friendship or whatever is honesty. And like on the part of, say, a therapist or somebody trying to help somebody else, like right now, this is how I feel, or maybe sometimes I don't really know, I don't know if this particular technique, what it's going to do for you, but like, I think sometimes human beings are afraid to be really honest about like, what do I know and how do I feel right now? So anyway, but thanks for saying that, and that reminder. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. That's a gorgeous painting behind you. Is that silk? What is it?
I get a lot of compliments for this, but it's really just like, I don't know, it's like something that was on the wall at Pier 1 Imports or something. I mean, it's just a print,
It's gorgeous though, and all the colors go together beautifully. Even your skin color's perfect. Never change that picture.
Well, thank you.
Funny.
I'm glad it's all working.
Yeah. I don't know about that shirt though. Maybe more of a pastel shirt.
I can change that.
Yeah. Thanks. How silly. That was my attempt to be honest.
You don't like my shirt? How dare you? I'm never coming back.
It's right. It's the ultimate rift in the relationship. Damn. Do you like mine? Oh dear.
It's okay. It's all right.
Yeah.
I like some of your other shirts maybe a little better. No, but I like it. It's a nice shirt. Yeah.
But Robert, it doesn't go with your background because you've got vertical and
Oh,
horizontal.
it's true. Ay, ay, ay. Well, I have to get my digital backgrounds going again. Well, friends, I hope you have a wonderful week. I will look forward to being here with you again. And I will most likely be sitting. In fact, I think I'll plan on that. I'll be sitting during the period of 7 to 8 on the weekday mornings. So let's go out with Bob. Oh, there's Molly. Great. Hello, Molly. You want to sing us out? Hang on. I'm going to get you. I'm gonna make you bigger here. So we'll do May all beings be happy, remembering what we mean is may all beings receive all blessings. All right, you want to unmute and go for it? Well, let me first, how are you doing, Molly?
Good.
Are you having a nice weekend?
Mm-hmm.
All right, you want to lead us singing?
May all
beings be happy.
May
all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, Molly and Aaron. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Robert. Have a great week.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Molly and Aaron from Tamara.
Have a wonderful retreat, Robert.
I think I shall. Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Blessings, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Robert.
Goodbye, Trina. Oh, there's Jill and Bruce. Hey.
Hey.
Hello up there in the Yukon.
Hi.
What's it like up there today?
Beautiful. We're just about to go for a walk.
Wonderful. You have such a place to go for a walk.
We do. We're going to go along the Yukon River.
How did I guess?
And there's an eagle's nest with 2 chicks. So we're going to go see the... Yeah.
How's your body doing, Bruce?
Oh, it's still pretty rough shape, I'm afraid. But,
Did you do did you survive the MRI?
Yeah, I did, and of course there's a few bits and pieces that aren't quite right. Bulging disc and the old degenerative arthritis thing you were talking about.
Oh shit. Yeah.
So.
But you can walk okay.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah. So.
Sometimes you make 10 minutes, sometimes an hour. It depends on the day. Yeah.
God, imagine being married to Jill.
I know.
Yeah, I have to sort of live vicariously with the adventures, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways,
have a fantastic time, Robert.
We'll be thinking of you.
I think I shall. I'm pretty ready.
I bet you are.
Yeah.
I don't mean ready in terms of exhausted. I mean ready in terms of the quiet is calling me.
Yeah. No, that's good.
You deserve some quiet. You got a busy life.
Okay.
I do.
But we'll be in touch when you get back.
Okay. Happy trails.
Okay. All right.
Bye-bye. Goodbye, Sherry and Shai and Amy and Eileen and Tamara and Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jimbo.
Thank you, Robert.
Are you ready for the leap to hyperspace?
you've got colors behind there that go perfectly with the shirt. So it actually brings the attention to the eyes. Like
Oh, good.
right here, so it works.
Yay. Bye-bye all. Take care.
Hi, dear.
Goodbye on Facebook and YouTube. I am not sure how effectively the other teachers will get broadcasting to Facebook and YouTube. I think Facebook is more likely. So please check in there during my absence. Or come to Zoom and go to robertbeatty.com and get the link